Hello all, and welcome to tonight's beer review, which I am dubbing the Times beer review. Why Times? Well, a while back I went to Times because it's near to this Indian restaurant I sometimes go to, and I realized, oh my god, they had like a whole bunch of craft beer on sale for 50% off. So I went and stocked up on it, and it didn't occur to me why they would probably have craft beer for 50% off. And that is because Times is not really a sort of supermarket that people who buy craft beer go to. And later on, as I popped open the first can, I realized, wow, this beer is really, really old. So the bulk of what I got was, kind of hoppy ales, including some India Pale Ales, but all of them were almost a year, or even older than that. So while they were still drinkable, they were nowhere near their peak, and some of them were kind of, have that really stale old beer taste. And of all that beer that I got, only one is really worth rating because, well, it was the least aged of them, and it was probably the type that could take aging the best out of all of them. And so, the beer I am going to be reviewing tonight is Worthy Brewing's Vanilla Cream Lights Out Extra Stout. This is 7.7 ABV, 30 IBUs. It says it's an American stout, but it doesn't seem to be in the American stout style. It seems to be pretty much a milk stout. That's because when I looked it up, it had, of course, lactose sugar that that milk sugar that milk stouts have, and it's very, very rich and dessert-like. So let's read the label, shall we? Crave-worthy. When the coffee and chocolate cravings call, this is your answer. Smooth, creamy, rich, sinful, and sip-worthy. Look into our dark and find your light. So, stout brewed with milk sugar and vanilla beans added. Not very hoppy, pretty high ABV, and this one was brewed in June of last year, so it's probably still holding up pretty close. It's maybe not as bright and sharp as it was when it first came off, but still very much drinkable. Exceedingly dark. Just a very little bit of light coming in from the bottom. So very dark, very well carbonated. Light brown head. Coffee notes, a sort of sweet note too that's kind of difficult to place. Almost a milky-like scent to it. If I could describe it, it's almost like a cross in between chocolate milk and coffee. Some sort of fruity notes to it, that sort of stewed fruit notes. All in all, fairly muted, though. It's probably because of the age. Very rich, very sweet. Not too thick on the tongue, slightly boozy in the mid. And there's sort of vanilla on the outliers there. The front is roasted coffee, toasted brown bread. Pretty heavy sweetness to it, almost like sugared butter ladled on top of it. The mids is where the chocolate shows up. It's sort of a cross, almost like, I'd say 45% bitter. Bitter, but still more on the sweet side than bitter. In regards to chocolate, that is. The finish, there's this quick burst of roastiness, and then a very subtle lingering sweetness on the tongue. Not cloying at all, which is kind of surprising for how sweet it is in the mid. It's probably due to most of the sweetness being from milk sugar, which tends to clear the palate quite a bit quicker. Rich tasting, very, very velvety smooth on the palate. I just kind of wish it was a little bit thicker. So, you know, it would have a bit more a tactile sort of sensation that matches the flavor intensity. It's not watery by any means, but it just doesn't... The mouthfeel is just a little bit too light compared to the flavor of this stout. Now, I haven't drank very many milk stouts, so I can't really compare it to what a milk stout should be like, or whether or not this is actually closer to an American stout, mainly because an American stout would have a bit more hopping than an English stout. Being that it's almost a year old, any sort of hopping that was there is probably diminished over time. Either way, the reason why I'm reviewing this one is because for a year old, this is actually still pretty drinkable, still pretty enjoyable. Which is more than I can say for most of those beers that were a year or so older, especially those with yeast on the bottom. I'll have to say that anything that's you know, live cultured beer, the one that has living yeast in it, it does not age well. That yeast definitely lends for some mighty, funkily unpleasant flavors. So, Worthy Brewing Vanilla Cream Lights Out Extra Stout. Pretty nice, desserty like milk stout / American stout. Worth a try if you ever get it as sort of a dessert beer. And not that bad for a beer that's supposedly well past its prime when you think about it in terms of brew-by dates. So, that's your beer review for tonight, folks. Cheers.